Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Talking Niagara. And look, Dave's back. Welcome, Dave. How are you doing? What did you do the weekend? Tell us all about this Kiwanis event.
The Kiwanis Convention, the Eastern Canada and Caribbean District of Kiwanis International, it is certainly the most unusual and diverse district of any service club anywhere in the world. Where Ontario, Quebec, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, and PEI combined with 13 countries in the Caribbean. The biggest one, of course, is Bahamas, but there are 13 of them. Curacao is one of them. We in our group we speak 3 different languages: English, French, and Dutch, because we also have Suriname in there. So we have the most unusual, and we had a bumper crop of conventioneers. They came up to Canada, 668 of them, over
Where was
600.
this?
Over 600.
Where was
What?
this held?
This was held at the Marriott, right by the
Oh,
falls.
so you weren't
As a
you
matter of
weren't
fact, it was what?
so you weren't fighting with the Comic Con then?
They were kitty corner to us. They were in the convention center, or we're right across the street in the Marriott.
Yeah.
And you'll see in the Niagara Falls Review, you'll see an article. We'll get to that about the Comic Con, but you won't see anything about one of the most unusual districts in the world, the ECNC, the Eastern Canada and Caribbean. You won't see anything about that. As a matter of fact, it was such an unusual event. When I had a volunteer shirt on, because I was working there, and this lady, a black lady, came up to me, and the only reason why I mentioned that is because the fact that she was black, because she said this. She was a black lady. She came up to me and in a Nigerian accent said, "What are all those black people doing in there? I noticed a lot of black people in there, and I noticed you have that volunteer shirt on. What are all those black people in there?" And she was a guest at the hotel too, and also black. And I said, she says, it seems to me very unusual. And I said, and then I described to her, well, it's the Eastern Canada and Caribbean district, and all these people, all of them come up from these particular black people, all came from the Caribbean, and except for the odd ones that live also in Canada. And she was quite fascinated by this. She, for some reason, it was very, very interesting to her that all these people from the Caribbean had come up, and she was kind of thrown aback. She didn't. I suppose of any hotel she's ever been in Canada, it had never been filled up like that with people of color, and that I mean, it was no big deal to me because I've been to lots of these, but yeah. But I thought it was remarkable that somebody. And then I got to talk to her, and I listened to her accent, and I says, "Well, are you from Ghana or Nigeria?" And she said, "No, well, Nigeria." And I said, "Because your accent is very similar to that of Ghana." And to be truthful, the accent of Nigeria and Ghana is very much like the island accents. So she would have fit right in.
Well, yeah, it's nothing, anyway, that's everybody comes, whatever they, everybody, everywhere needs these service clubs, and, everybody gets involved, and that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, it's a big deal too. And every one of our nights, we have what's called a Jamaica night. And that for us was on Friday night. And that's when the Caribbean contingent gets all together, especially the Jamaican one, because it's the biggest, gets together and they have a little party, just a Jamaican night party where they serve food that's typical Jamaican food and just have a party. And so I went there for a couple hours on Friday night with one of our more older lady members who anyway, so we went there, and and the Caribbean people, it started slow. They're never in a hurry to get there on time. It's supposed to start at 8 o'clock, but most people didn't start showing up till about 10. But Tuesday, by that time, it was a slow lead up. But once things got going, and then the next thing you know, just about almost everybody's on the dance floor, and I'm watching these ladies, and they never leave the dance floor. They're on there constantly, steady, and they just will and once that got after a while, the people were coming into the place, didn't even bother going to get a beer or go and get a table or anything, just walked right onto the dance floor and started dancing and never quit. And I kind of a little bit jealous of that, to be able to be that uninhibited, just to walk in and start doing that.
Yeah.
I should also, and yeah, of course, you'll never get anything of the review out of that, because it would take a little bit of work to figure out what was going on there. So, so they were at the Comic Con.
Even if
Great kitty corner is another story.
Yeah, weird. It's weird. You would expect to, what you call the standard paragraph. The Eastern Canadian, etc., district of Kiwanis met in Niagara Falls. That would have been what you call a standard paragraph, right?
Well, yeah, the mayor was there. Mayor Diodati was there, and he gave a nice little speech, welcome speech to all the delegates. Of course, he was late too. We can call him an honorary Jamaican because he was late. But anyway, he came there, and he gave quite a good little spiel. He very enjoyable for everyone. So the mayor did, when he did finally show up, he did a very nice speech in front of all these delegates. He must be speaking in front of about 800 at the time, because there was the 600 or so delegates, but with their families as well.
Were you both a delegate and a volunteer?
No, this time I wasn't a delegate. I've been a delegate to the last. I've been a delegate. I was a delegate in.
So you gave that up for somebody else to get the experience.
1, 2, 3, 4. I think I've been a delegate 5 times.
Maybe so you gave that up for somebody else's to get the experience of it.
Yeah. Newer members, other members.
Yeah. Good.
Actually, we made one of our oldest member a delegate because it was her last kick at the can in our club. She's moving over to St. Catherine's Club to be closer to family and stuff. So
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's a good thing. Okay. All right. So of course, as you kind of pointed out, the Niagara Falls Comic Con was diagonally across the road from you. I always find these are kind of interesting, but I never want to go because it's kind of, it's like I'm just going to go in a shirt and pants, normal attire. I don't want to go amongst a bunch of nutcases who are all wearing uniforms and want to be on Star Trek.
Well, I don't really look at it that way. I myself wouldn't be dressing up. I can't get that enthused about any of this stuff, but these people do. Yeah. And they have that ability to fantasize and to get into the storylines and the fantasy of a lot of this work. And they have, and I kind of admire them. They're able to sort of just get involved, become part of the action in a way that satisfies them. There's a guy here that comes every year, and he dresses like some kind of imp, and other people. They have here actor Warwick Davis. He was there, I guess, and he's one of the best money-making character actors.
Yeah,
and he was there. Well, that gives you an indication of how much money these actors must be offered for them to do a Comic-Con. They must be having, that must be a good source of income for them. Now, I guess it's a double. They get to promote Hollywood in a way, and also make some money.
Well, they promote their shows even if the show's no longer on air. So you got Warwick Davis, Robert Eglund, and Michael Rooker were all in attendance this year.
I wonder if Karen Fraser was in attendance as the senior winner of this year. Senior.
Okay, so before we go too far, Mike and Gary are taking the region and the city on the tour to Cyanamid property. I won't be able to go. Would you like to be able to go? Would you be able to go?
I'm hoping to. That's at 1 or 2 o'clock. Is it today? 1 or 2 o'clock, I think it is.
Yeah. We'll contact Mike afterwards. Okay.
Yeah, maybe the guy just posted up here at the time. They're going to meet at the hockey player at the Gale Center, I think. At
that's
1
correct.
or 2 o'clock.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. Now you mention it, I remember where. I can't unfortunately make it. For me, getting back to here by 1 o'clock is kind of a nightmare anyway.
I should be available for that.
I can't do it.
10:30 a.m. Oh, geez.
10:30 a.m.
Yeah, I'll 10:30 a.m. Yeah.
There you go. Well, I can't make it anyway.
I think I'll be able to make it, but it'll be a little bit tight. I got to collect that bingo stuff, but I should be able to make it.
The thing about Comic-Con in Niagara Falls is it happens every year, right? At the convention center. It's been kind of the mainstay for the convention center. And I guess that we've kind of, we kind of get it. I suppose it's Canada's premier Comic-Con, isn't it?
I suppose. I don't know much about Comic-Cons. Although I remember I had this lady that used to cut my hair, not by appointment. She just happened to be the one in the salon sometimes when I go in there, and she, I thought she was pretty intelligent lady, and I was very surprised she went to a Comic-Con. And I said, "Well, why do you go there? It seems to be always so crowded and all that." He says, "Oh, you get to talk to all these actors." And she talked about how she talked to the guy who played Gus in Breaking Bad. And I said, "He was there?" He says, "Yeah, he was really nice, pleasant, funny. He was a really good guy to talk to, give you, so you could ask him questions about, so that's very interesting for some people. Unless she wasn't the type that got dressed up. She just went there to talk to the actors and stuff because it was of interest to her." And I thought, well, yeah, on that level, I'd be kind of interested too, where I could actually go in there and ask a couple of questions of an actor that played a part that I particularly liked, But
yeah, I'm not sure I'd even want to do that, I know they're there to answer people's questions, but it's like one of the things about living in London, which we don't get in North America, is I could be kind of shopping in the local supermarket and bump into an actor or a musician or something like that, and you kind of go, "Aren't you?" And they go, "Yeah, I am," and you don't even mention the name, and you just say, "Hey, nice to meet you," and go on your way, kind of thing.
Well, I'm pretty lousy that way. I've bumped into celebrities I didn't even know were celebrities. Like I was down in the Hamptons one time with a friend walking around there, and some famous actor was right there. I just kind of walked around him because he was in my way. And my friend said, she told me, "Oh, that's so-and-so. That's some famous actor." And because she went to him and just kind of went like, "Are you?" And he went, "Yeah." And but I didn't. I was completely clueless. I didn't know who the hell he was,
Well, I was, yeah. You see, I used to regularly bump into. There was a couple of musicians that always used to hang out at Stu Copeland's house, right? He was the drummer for the Police, and there was almost around the corner from him was a guy who was with Bob Geldof's band.
The Boomtown Rats.
Boomtown Rats, and they also used to live in the same area. They used to hang out together. I just kind of one morning, my girlfriend used to live there at the time, right? And I remember walking around the corner, smack into them one time.
Yeah,
And kind of, and it's like only afterwards I kind of go, oh, that was,
yeah. Well, yeah, that's pretty cool. But I guess everybody's got to be a little bit more careful these days after like John Lennon got shot and so on. And
yeah,
but even so, about the only I remember seeing Bob Goulet. There's a couple other ones I saw. I can't even remember them right now. They'll come to mind. The Queen Mother, but like I was with a couple yards away from the Queen Mother, and when she waved at me, and so I just kind of accidentally came upon her, and I didn't know that she was going to be in Toronto at that time.
yeah, I get it. All right. Yeah. So I guess there's a certain set of people who want to go to Comic-Con. Never been interested myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, look, for anybody that's into that, they are into it. And look, I kind of appreciate them being able to get what they can out of it. That obviously it's a joyous thing for them. When we were loading the buses up with conventioneers, going to Greg Fruin's theater, because that was one of the things we did at the convention. And so there was just Comic-Con people walking by, all in costumes. Like some people showed up with big axes and swords and spears and things like that. And of course, I wasn't hip to the Comic-Con. I didn't know what was happening. And I'm watching all these people with costumes coming towards us, and I think, oh, who are these nutcases? And then one of the other coordinators said, oh, no, there's that Comic-Con right over there. And then I looked, and of course, there's all kinds of them, and they're spilling out around the Marriott as well. So some of them must be there. Yeah. And so and then I thought, well, then I began to appreciate it. Yeah, and these are people getting having a real joyous time. They're having a good time doing what they're doing. And anybody that's happy like that, my hat's off to them.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. And so moving on, I came across this women criminalized by circumstances outside their control. This is an article about Western Australia, but it's a piece by The Conversation, and they deal with a lot of things across the world, and they're talking about no support, no housing, no job, a vicious cycle that's pushing more and more women into prison. And the question here it's not just, yes, they may be talking about Western Australia in this particular article, but they're talking about women who become victims of multiple forms of abuse, including family violence, that have essentially turned to bad behavior. I wouldn't say crime, but they've ended up through circumstances going to prison. In fact, generally speaking, female inmates are going on the rise by about 25% across the Western world.
I don't know. I didn't get that article. I don't think
you didn't.
No.
Oh, I thought I gave it to you.
I got one opinion: no one should struggle to live because they can't find accessible. That's from the Calgary.
No, that was another. Okay, let me drop this into your
yeah, I didn't get that
thing. I think The Conversation. This one. Anyway.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I didn't get this one. No.
Oh, weird. Okay. Yeah. And I think it's the reason I put it up not because of Western Australia, but it's the across the globe, numbers of rates of women in prisons are growing faster than those of men. That's pretty bad.
Yeah, like in North America, there are 9 men in prison for every woman, and for violent crimes, of course, for people who commit violent crimes, of course, men commit like 95% of them.
Probably, yeah.
So the crimes that these women are doing are probably
Well,
thievery and
well, they're talking about people who are in cycles of harm. So they've gone from a relationship where they were in harm into kind of a situation whereby they're causing themselves to be in prison, to end up in prison.
So Australia sits higher end with 8% of its inmates being female. That's rather large, actually.
It is. It is.
Um, yeah, but it's about the same as it is here. But it depends on what they're in there for.
But it's the numbers of it. The question was, is the numbers of women in jail are going up, have gone up by about 25%.
What are the type of crimes they're committing?
Well, generally not the high end crime, not the not the rapes and murder type things, but more the low end burglaries and that sort of thing.
The results from earlier research
that,
which showed women in criminal justice system are frequent victims of domestic and family violence.
Yeah.
However, there's much more to the story. Cycles of harm.
And the female population in Western Australia jails is 62% of sentences are for non-violent crimes.
So many of the women were exposed to violence, alcohol, drugs, crime, and poverty from an early age. Well, any guy that was exposed to them was also going to be, in that cycle of harm. They describe negative life events such as trauma, physical and sexual abuse, negative neglect, and domestic violence. Well, also men or boys grow up with that as well.
Yeah.
Now, this makes them criminals. Well, yeah, it would make the boys more likely to be criminals too, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So I'm still wondering what kind of crimes they're doing. And it
he said mostly non-violent crimes.
Well, the criminal rates for them are going up about 25%, it says here. So there are 25% more women in prison in Australia than before. I expect that just like here in Canada, you'll find a very high percentage of them being Indigenous people.
Well, that again, yeah, something like they were talking about. They were talking about a lot of the people that they've been talking to, 80 Indigenous and non-Indigenous women in prisons throughout Perth in Western Australia.
Yes. So that is, yeah. So
the reason
if you look at these stats, first of all, where are you going to find the poverty, the drug abuse, and you're going to find that more among Indigenous people everywhere. You're finding it in Mongol societies now. When the Mongolians are coming off the steppe going to the city, they're running into the same problems, the same issues as in Indigenous people here in Canada when they come off the reserves and go into the cities. They're similarly vulnerable because of their their situation, and so that's a big issue there. Where is it growing the most? Is it growing the most among Indigenous, or what about the non-Indigenous?
They don't actually say that. They don't actually say that here because they were talking to 80 women, some of which were Indigenous, some not.
Well, the fact of the matter is that's what I don't like about an article like that. It goes on to say as if it's happening across the board, and women incarceration is going up. It doesn't tell you who. It doesn't tell you what kind of crimes. It tells you that they're from backgrounds of violence, domestic violence, and abuse. Well, so are boys. They're in the same situation. So those girls that they're talking about, their brothers, are also going through the same thing. So of course they connect that. So is that what's making women more likely to get into jail? Well, obviously it's the same thing that's making boys more likely to end up in jail going through
I
that
think I
situation.
think we've got a general. I think you'll find that we're getting a situation where poverty and homelessness are leading to more people in jail anyway.
Yeah, so I think the article is completely useless, and except for the fact that it says that 25% there's an increase in women going into jail. But it
It's the
doesn't
increase.
tell you why. It
Yeah,
tells
it's
you
the increase.
domestic abuse, sexual
Yeah,
abuse at a young age. Well, that's the same thing that's happening to boys.
yeah,
So why is it suddenly affecting women more now than it ever did before? Why?
yeah.
It doesn't tell you that. That I hate articles like that because it it's a clickbait. 25% more women in prisons as before. Well, why? Why? Tell me why. And they're not telling you why.
Yeah. I'm just, you see, what was interesting to me is the fact that we're talking about 25% more than before. We're also talking about how this is an international phenomenon.
Yeah, it's international, but it has a lot to do with the the drop in the standard of living and the availability of drugs. Uh, I think that's a big part of it, and it doesn't go into the percentages of indigenous. You might have like 20% of the indigenous people being affected, but only 5% of the non-indigenous people being affected. Well, so why is it? Um, is it going up at the same rate among indigenous and non-indigenous? You know what I mean? So there's a
Yeah.
lot this article says. So it says, "Oh wow, well, more women in prison, 25% more." And oh, guess what? That's because they were growing up in bad situations of where they've been exposed to violence, sexual abuse, and drug abuse, and alcohol. Well, so what? What's new about that? Nothing's new about that. Absolutely nothing. So tell me why now women are ending up in jail more often than they did before because they've been exposed to that for
I,
decades and generations, and it hasn't caused that number to rise.
I have to say that I think probably in the past we've had a kind of in the judiciary, we've had a kind of women don't commit an attitude which has been wrong is that women don't commit those kinds of crimes, and we don't put them in prison for such crimes. Whereas, when I did a study when I was doing my law degree, which came from the criminology department, and criminology were talking about the fact that generally, a man and a woman that have committed the same crime, same level of violence, etc., the woman more often gets let go than the man does.
Yeah, even Lizzie Borden, they couldn't bring themselves to the famous Lizzie
Yeah,
Borden case where she hacked to death her parents. They couldn't, even though the evidence strongly indicated that she did the crime. The attitude at the time, the cultural attitude at the time, wouldn't allow them to come to sentence her because that would have meant she had to hang. It's very
yeah,
unusual for people to have women hanging, as a matter of fact, in New York State, the very last woman ever to be hanged was in Herkimer because she was a deadly murderess, if you like, and she was hanged in I think around 1890 in Herkimer, the little place of Herkimer, New York. But you don't find very many women being hanged, but they
but
don't
I,
do
but I,
violent crime as much.
but
It
I
does.
also think that there's a change in the judiciary insofar as there's probably now more women in the judiciary, and a woman coming up against a woman judge, the woman judge is probably not even going to hesitate to put her in prison.
Yeah, I agree with that. We still have that cultural thing. We don't want because women because that. But then if you're a judge and that woman is a mother, right, and
Yeah,
she may have cheated somebody or stole
yeah.
something, you know.
I guess the mother aspect is a kind of offers an element of hesitancy.
Yeah. So and children need their mom, even if it's a bad mom. They still have these strong attachments to
Yeah.
a mom. Mother's probably the strongest mother-child is probably the strongest attachment in human in the human experience, basically.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, but I don't really like the article too much because I mean it highlights the fact that more and more women are going into prison, but it really doesn't tell you why. It just gives you this fluff. Oh, it's because of abuse, it's domestic abuse, it's all this other stuff. But the boys do live through that same thing too. Are there going to into prison more because of that? No, and we still have in North America 9 times as many men in prison as there's women.
Yeah.
And the violent crimes that are committed are probably 90% of the violent crimes that happen in North America are
Well,
male based.
and let's be honest and be blunt about one thing. For example, the only women that are in prison for rape are typically women who've aided and abetted rape, not been part of the rape.
Yeah, like Giselle Maxwell or Ghislaine Maxwell, whatever that weirdo's name is.
Yeah.
The one with Epstein's
Yeah.
weirdo
Yeah.
woman.
And you see, for example, it's physically impossible for a woman to commit rape.
Yeah, it is. You can get some pretty rough women prisoners, oddly enough. Now we're talking about prison, who can impose themselves on other women. I don't know.
That's a different, it's a different matter. But you see, for example, rape is almost a purely male domain.
Yeah, it is. Look, men have testosterone. That which makes them more violent. If a woman's going to kill you, she's more likely to poison you rather than a man who gets mad and wants to kill you. More likely to bludgeon you to death or shoot you dead right there on the spot. A woman who doesn't like you and wants you out of the way, more likely to get a man to do it or poison you.
Yeah, get a man to do it or poison. Yeah, I don't know about the poison you, but still,
this is number one. The poison is the number one weapon of choice for women in murder.
I know it used to be years ago. I don't know what the current statistics are.
I don't know either.
Yeah.
But women aren't the type that would take a gun and shoot you in the head.
Yeah.
If they're sober. Men would, though.
Yeah. All right, moving on. There was an article in the Calgary Herald that was talking about nobody should have to struggle because they can't find accessible, affordable housing. And I have to wonder, it's the added word. I almost passed this article by and I kind of said, hang on a moment. There's an extra word in there that I didn't read. Accessible. Accessible housing, of course, means you've got wheelchair accessibility. And you've got obviously people with physical disabilities, and you've got part of the problem there is, of course, you've got people with people with disabilities almost typically fulfill the lower ends of the money spectrum.
Yeah. No. Yeah. So that's the opinion article that you put from the Calgary Herald.
Yeah.
And and it's really telling us something that we didn't. It doesn't really telling us anything we didn't already know. And
in a way, yes, but it's put it in the language of saying, okay, it's think for once of the need for accessibility.
But it also is a response to the National Accessibility Week that ran from May 25th to
I grant that, yeah,
June 31st,
yeah,
which was to highlight this kind of thing. And this is a good reminder article for us that only about this talks about Calgary, but I imagine it's the same everywhere. Only about 2 or 3% of new housing is completely accessible. So you like the homes that we the apartments that we've built in as Kiwanians here in town, they're all accessible, right? They have to be accessible. The one in Atlantis is particularly accessible. It's made for people, a lot of whom are in wheelchairs,
Yeah,
because we're in concert with the March of Dimes. There, they provide
yeah,
the wheelchairs kind of thing. We provide the housing that the wheelchairs fit into, and so on.
yeah, yeah.
And so this is a big deal. It's always a problem. One of our Quanian members is in a wheelchair, and when we go anywhere, uh, uh, he'll ask, like, have somebody check out the washroom facilities to see if they're available. When we were at the Greg Fruin Theater, one of the guys went to check the washroom to make sure that he could get in there with his wheelchair if he needed it. Same thing at the hotel.
Yeah.
And scope out the washroom to make sure he can get in or out of it, or which one he can get in and out of, all that kind of thing. Uh, Luckily, the big hotels and the big theaters were very, very accessible. But housing, well, where is that? And let's be very clear here. As our demographic is aging, most of us are aging older and older now. And as we age, we're going to need more and more accessible washrooms and sinks and everything else. We're going to be a
Well,
walker.
one of the aspects about accessibility, I was actually we have a couple of disabled clients in our office, and one of the aspects that they were talking to is that most people don't think about this, but you go into a bathroom and the sink is at a particular level, but think about yourself being in a wheelchair. That level is 6 to 8 inches too high.
Even if they do, look, they come in with plans, and this is typical. If you ask anybody who's been in a wheelchair or other people who have some sort of disability, what they do is they go in and they make the booths and they put in the sinks, but they don't take somebody disabled with them.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
and what happens is, even though they lower the sinks, you talk to people, they still can't reach them, or there's something like there's no thought put into them, and they all say the same thing. Why didn't they just take somebody with a wheelchair in there so that they could make it so they could see what they're doing? What they
Yeah.
do is they go by plans.
Well,
And when I had a buddy with a wheelchair, and I'd take him to concerts and stuff, and there'd be the booth, right? The one booth for the wheelchair, the stall for the wheelchair, but it'd be way down at the end, crowded between the sinks and in an aisle. And so you had to go in there, and if you didn't have someone to help you maneuver to get in there, once you're in there, you're fine.
yeah.
But where that should be nowadays,
It's
should
right
be
at the
right
front.
there, the first one where you can go in easily, get into it.
Yeah.
Lots of
Well, it's also the other thing I've noticed about like how do you go into parking places, and yes, there's a disabled parking, but it's not near the door. Right?
yeah.
You go to a Starbucks or a Starbucks or a Burger King or something like that, and how many of them they've all got disabled parking, but they're not opposite the door. They're not accessible to the door.
Yeah, they have to have so many in. I don't know what
Yeah.
the rules are, but
Yeah.
but
And actually, how much? There's another question. You know about the Ontario for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. I think that's what it's called, which stated that by the 1st of January this year, all all certain classes of buildings had to all be accessible, but very few of them are.
well, that's one of the reasons why the Stanford Lions building on Portage Road there got
Yeah,
tasted
exactly.
the wrecking ball.
Yeah.
They tried to do a
It's not.
GoFundMe to get enough money to make to add accessible stuff to it. They weren't getting too far, and they were going to be they're going to have a building that was not accessible. They couldn't afford it to make it accessible, so they sold it and it got knocked down. And so there is drawbacks there. So that was a really good meeting place, that Stanford Lions building there. I'd been at parties and dances in there. I've been to euchre tournaments and everything in there. It was also the meeting of the Alcoholics Anonymous happened in there. So they couldn't get enough money to make it accessible. So here was a meeting, a very valuable meeting place that everybody used, could not meet that criteria. They only had the choice then to sell it, and now it's out of use for the public. So there is a drawback of these regulations when they don't allow you time to get the money to do it, or it might not be practical either. So then,
in an older building like that, it's probably totally impractical. The only thing they could have done would have been to have rebuilt the building.
well, you take the independent order, the Oddfellows Hall in St. Catharines. They have a long staircase up to a very fine opening there, where in their temple, where I've seen the performances of late. The only thing they have that's accessible is one of those sit-down chairs that you can zoom up on. But there's no other way they're going to be able to make that any more accessible.
But again, how do you do that if you've got a wheelchair?
Yeah, well, what you do is you get off that wheelchair and somebody carries your wheelchair up.
Yes, exactly.
And actually, with a friend of mine, what we would do, there wasn't a whole lot of accessible stuff. So one of us would pull him up, another one would on his feet would go up these long staircases, bump by bump, all the way up. And we got him anywhere he wanted to go that way, but there was no accessibility otherwise. But yeah, let's go back to the housing thing here, the accessibility and the aging demographic. And we are not, and I suppose even like if you wanted some real insight into this, you probably Karen Fraser could give you some really good insights. It must be frustrating for her continually. I think she's even questioned. She's being questioned about her disability status on taxes or something. I can't remember exactly right now, but yeah, I would think that she would be the one, particularly being the distinguished senior in town as she is, plus having disabilities of her own. She'd have the best.
Well, I was going to say, remember, we generally largely do talk about people with disabilities as people within wheelchairs, but the vast majority of people who have disabilities don't have wheelchairs. They are the walking wounded, so to speak. And I think you and I would both qualify under that category.
I might be judged disabled from the neck up, but other than that, I'm all right now.
Well, you see, when you think about it, when I was a kid, I used to be one of the fastest people on the planet walking wise. I was amongst the top 150 race walkers in the world. Now I'm probably one of the slowest people on the planet walking.
I'm pretty sure I've never been really that fast. I had brawn rather than speed. I had so my forte was strength rather than speed.
Yeah,
that's why I was a wrestler.
Yeah, I get it.
Not a sprinter.
Yeah, because well, me walking is not a sprint event. Race walking actually was something. The minimal distance you do in the Olympics, 20 kilometers.
And when I played football, I was like the defensive end, so I didn't have to go very far to clobber somebody. So you wouldn't find me in the in pass protection, or you wouldn't find me on the offense running because people catch up to me real quick. But I could get in the way pretty quick if I was defensive end.
But again, your job, if I was the quarterback, your job is to protect me, right?
No, well, I was a defensive end, and my job was to go after the quarterback and the runner. And I had a partner. I had a cornerback. The guy behind me was a cornerback, and I was a defensive end. And he get me in trouble because I tackle a guy, and then he jump on my back, and this is what I would see. So I've got the guy, I've got him down, his head in front of my head, kind of. I've got him down, and all of a sudden I'd see this from the guy, from my buddy on top by the cornerback. He'd just jump on and give the guy a few shots. The guy would think it was me that did it, right? So now I have to have a little fight with him. You get me in trouble like that all the time.
Anyway, yeah. Yeah, and it's kind of weird when you lose that ability, but it is what it is. And what they're talking about here is more a deep need to make accessible housing standard, not the exception.
Yeah. So we have this in we have a problem, of course, and we have to solve it. So that's basically what this article is about. It's just a reminder. There is no solution thing here. It's just a reminder. Yeah, well, guess what? Remember, everybody, we don't have a whole lot of accessible units out there, and we all know that anyway. But it's nice to be reminded of it.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on. Whoop. Not that one. Nor that one. We're moving on. So the Canadian dental care plan is expanding. There. Actually, it started May the 1st. I thought it was June the 1st. Okay. As of June the 1st, 2025, aged 18 to 65 who do not have private dental insurance, who have an adjusted net family income, can apply.
Now, I put this in here as sort of a shout out to anybody who has forgotten about this or has wondered about this. The dental care plan, if you don't have any, if you're uninsured as is, it's no good for me because I have benefits, right?
Yeah.
So if I lose my benefits, however, then I can get on this. But it's not likely I'm going to lose my benefits because I pay for them every month. And it's done through my union.
Yeah.
And so now, who is eligible? Now, there are a lot of you out there are eligible, and you can get a lot of dental work done here, a lot of stuff, and it's going to save you a lot of money. And so it will include phases, different phases over May, which includes people of 55 to 64 years old, 18 to 34-year-old, and now 35 to 55-year-olds who meet the program requirements. The coverage
and you've
will
got
be
to have a net income
as early as Sunday, June 1st. So this is something you want to look into. Dental care is
you've got to have an adjusted family net income below 90,000 to apply.
That's will cover most people.
Yeah.
Cover most people, and believe me, even with if you take a family and you've got only one person that's insured in your house and you take your kids to the dentist, you're still going to get hit with a bill. But this is good. This is going to be good for everyone. This is going to improve people's dental health, oral health for sure. And who is eligible to apply? Senior 65 years and older, uninsured adults between the ages of 18 and 64. So if you don't have any dental insurance already, that's for you. Children under 18 from qualifying families, and people with disabilities, of course. To qualify, you have to be a Canadian citizen or permanent resident, not have private dental insurance, which I have, so it's no good for me, but it's going to be good for the majority of people out there, and meet a minimum income requirement.
But also, there's another factor that hasn't been mentioned here. You have to have filed your 2024 taxes.
Yeah, so you have to be, you have to have filed them, and anyway, so social insurance number, date of birth, all this, full name, mailing address, et cetera, and you have to renew the plan. I don't know why I have to keep renewing it, but
no, you have to, basically, because what happens is it's dependent upon your income from the last year, right? So your 2024 income determines whether you are eligible for the plan today. So next year you have to apply, and your taxes have to be kept up to date.
All right, so it's a bit of a pain in the ass, but it's worth it.
Yeah,
you can get some dental care, and dental care is a big deal. They find it's more and more connected with the rest of your health overall. So this is a good chance to get some dental care. This dental care is very expensive. It's out of reach for most people who don't have insurance. It's just very, very expensive. And this is your chance. And this is a good thing overall. I don't know how much it's going to cost the taxpayer, but in the end, it will benefit people.
Yeah, and go to the Canadian Government Dental Plan website for further information. And by the way, good morning, Nancy from Cleveland, and happy June to you as well.
Wow, I don't know. It's probably been just as chilly in Cleveland as being here.
Yeah.
Hasn't been.
She's been telling me about how bad the weather has been. Yeah, and they get the same weather pattern as we do, more or less. Yeah, she's only the other side of Lake Erie.
That's right. They're about halfway down Lake Erie's way, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah. And probably a 3-hour drive to get to her place from here.
Where is it in comparison to Toledo?
I don't know. Don't know.
Or Erie. It's got to be farther than. Well, of course, it's farther than Erie, Pennsylvania. But I'd probably on about an hour or so kick down the road from there, isn't it?
It'd be something like that. Yeah, not that far. Yeah.
Well, there we have it, everyone. Just as a note, I just mentioned Erie, of course, Lake Erie and Erie are named after the Erie natives that no longer exist.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else in relation to our dental plan?
Nothing more. I would just encourage anybody who's listening today, if they themselves need it or know somebody, that this is a good time to look into it and apply for it.
Yeah. Next one I find is disturbing, right? And it's very disturbing on a number of levels. 8 people in Colorado, a fire attack after suspect shouts "Free Palestine." Well, you're not freeing it, by taking such attacks, taking such measures, torching a building is not freedom. Is not.
Well, tell them what happened. Well, tell them what happened first.
Yeah,
tell them what happened first before
you see, that's the thing. So basically, police said 8 people, aged 52 were 52 to 88 were injured in an attack upon Pearl Street Mall, a popular outdoor space in Boulder, Colorado, about 50 kilometers from Denver. And they suspect a suspected terror attack used a makeshift flamethrower, Molotov cocktails, and other incendiary devices to attack the mall.
All right, this was actually it was an attack on Jewish people. The man shouted "Free Palestine," which is not going to help the Palestine effort at all, throwing Molotov cocktails at Jewish people demonstrating for they're demonstrating for the hostages. So it is they're gathering in support of
they hold walks
in Colorado. And this idiot runs around and he starts throwing Molotov cocktails and starting to burn people in an outdoor space. Now, he didn't kill anybody, but he's certainly damaged some people in incendiary devices. Now, this particular guy, now unlike the other guy who killed the 2 young Jewish people in Washington, that was outright murder with a gun. He wasn't Islamic, and we don't know what caused him to become radicalized. But this guy was an Egyptian, and so he's probably radicalized by some Islamist sort of terror network. They have called it a terrorist attack. Unfortunately, this is going to do nothing good for the Palestinians at all. All they're doing is giving guys like Netanyahu and that fodder to use. Look at all the anti-Semitism going on.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's what I say. I mean, you are causing, you know, I can see causing a disturbance, shouting "Free Palestine," flamethrower. Yeah, yeah, like it's disgusting.
Yeah, it's just, where are their minds? If you want to do something for Palestine, you don't go around killing people. You
Yeah,
don't go around
yeah.
targeting Jews. You're just walking right into. You're just giving. It's just
You're
stupid. It's
giving the other
exactly
side.
opposite of what you should be doing.
Yeah,
And to throw Molotov cocktails, burn people. The other guy, he killed two like in Washington. He shot down two young people just beginning their lives. They were going to get married, and he removes them from the planet. And
and
what
then no,
good is that going to do anybody? So who are these people? They're doing more harm to the Palestinian cause than anything. Right
yeah.
now,
Oh yeah,
Netanyahu is getting away with bombing the crap and murdering children and women like crazy, 20, 30 at a time. This is a Molotov cocktails that thrown that didn't kill anybody but burned people. I mean, it's bad. But what uh, uh, you're giving cover for Netanyahu, who is bombing and killing children every day. Um, you're never going to get any kind of support if you do that kind of thing. I just don't understand that at all. But I don't know. It's just very frustrating to me when that happens. And another thing that's frustrating to me,
yeah.
the amount we hear a lot about the anti-Semitism, but we don't hear a whole lot. We've stopped hearing about the anti-Islamic, the Islamophobic attacks that are out there. They don't
Yeah.
seem to be making the paper anymore. They briefly made the paper when a Jewish guy came out and he shot two other Jews who he thought were Palestinians down in Florida.
But again, that's nuts. It's nuts. Absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, moving on. Right. There's a new word out there. A financial columnist has described Donald Trump. He's given him a new word. He's got taco. Trump always chickens out. So he coined the phrase on May 2nd, referring to Trump's pattern of announcing steep tariffs and then only to backpedal.
Yeah, he came up with this acronym. He didn't expect it to go viral. And now he kind of regrets it because he's afraid that Trump will double down now just because he's got this name called Taco. Trump, the taco, the taco president. Trump always chickens out. Now the guy that came up with that is unfortunately, he feels that maybe that will make Trump become even more likely to hold on to tariffs or put them on just
More
to
in
show
blazing,
everybody.
yeah.
Now Trump says these are negotiations. This is what I used to do negotiation. I threaten them with big tariffs, and and then I negotiate them down again. So he flip flops on his tariffs, and this is supposed to be the way he negotiates. Everybody else is confused about it, but apparently Trump has reason to do that. Put 145 tariff on, then drop it down to 30. Put one on at 25%, drop it down to 10%.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Aside from the financial turmoil in the stock markets, it seems to have been I'll give you an outlandish figure. Hey, Dave, to Daveland, we're going to be applying 200% tariffs. Oh, and Dave turns around and communicates, "That's okay, Dave. We won't do the 200% tariffs. We'll do 25%." And all of a sudden now you've got tariffed at 25%. You go, "Well, that's reasonable," but you didn't realize that before you weren't tariffed at all.
All I know is somebody's making out huge in the stock market. They see the pattern, right?
Yeah.
So when the stock is high, they sell it and they wait till another announcement from tariffs and the stock market was down. They buy it, and they know Trump's going to back out again. It'll go back up. and then he'll bring it on again, coat it back down.
Yeah.
And people are making money every time this thing's going up and
Yeah.
down,
Yeah.
including people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who made out huge out of the first wave of up and downs. So there is this idea that the people on the inside know when he's going to make one of these announcements, know when to buy and sell. But the the thing here is he's this the guy's name is Armstrong, and he writes for the Financial Times, and he came up with this taco thing, but he didn't think it was going to go viral. He was just kind of using it between him and other journalists as a kind of a, oh, what's happening now? Is the taco thing happening? Trump chickening out again? Um, uh, but that may infuriate Trump, and now he's worried that it will. That it will infuriate Trump, and Trump will just out of spite put more tariffs on, just to show everybody how tough he is and put more on.
And
he increased the steel and aluminum tariffs to 50%, which to me is like he's shooting himself in the foot, because he needs that steel and aluminum. They have no capacity to make, but they have some capacity for the steel, but not for the aluminum. So I just really don't get that one.
Yeah. You'd think that with the items that they don't produce themselves, they would actually have 0% tariff on it.
Yeah, you think, well, they do produce aluminum, but not near as much as they need. And that's because they don't have places with vast amounts of energy, which you require to smelt aluminum. Steel, they have the capacity. They can open up some of the old steel mills and get them going again. So they have room to increase capacity there. So they possibly don't need as much Canadian steel, but that means we don't need their steel either. So what happened is we made a certain kind of steel, they made a certain kind of steel. We send our plate down there, and they send maybe their I-beams or whatever else back up here. What this does is force us to start thinking, well, we should be making our own I-beams, and that kind of thing. So I really don't see the use of it. I can understand the steel workers being very happy down there, because they've seen steel mills close all over the place. So it doesn't matter where they're going to get their steel from. They want it domestically made, and they definitely have the capacity to do that in the States. Whether they can do it as cheaply as we can do it, I don't know. Plus, steel is made all over the world. Steel is one of the most basic industrial processes everywhere in the world. So there's abundance of steel everywhere. So to be able to make domestic steel and to keep it competitive, that's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, and then the question, it's going to be a challenge, and the question here is he's go up and down, and he's been up and down on the whole start of this anyway. We know that. We've been observing that.
Basically, I watch Kevin O'Leary every once in a while, and I'm glad to see that the PBS has invited him on to be, and also other conservatives, and the PBS has ignored in the past. They're trying to open up and become more of a thorough news agency, which I'm glad, because I rely on them a lot for solid news. So, but I do know that they have bias, and they were trying to address that bias. So they had Kevin O'Leary, who's normally on the on Fox News and that kind of thing, but I like to watch him anyway. And he's pretty well said that that there's all kinds of bluster and noise in that, but when it comes right down to it, the he's making money based on his anticipation that there will be a 10% tariff across the board when everything shakes out and settles down. There'll be a 10% tariff on everything coming into the States. And that is a means by which they can take some of the money that people are paying in income tax, and now those people will be paying it in tariffs. The average American will be paying the tariff rather than a tax. So it looks as if their taxes are going down or maintaining, but it's kind of it's a way in which the government can make money and make it look like it's not a tax.
By the way, we forgot one thing, and we're going to have to finish it at this point. Mr. Tesla is no longer part of the government in America. Elon Musk left.
Well, he said he was only in there for 120 days, and he only saved about, I think it's only, like, some people say 150 billion. Others say that when you really look at it, it's only about $60 billion. Now, some people are praising him for going about what should have been done. He wasn't that successful because the government wouldn't let him be that successful. And that's the Trump government. Of course, there's rivals in there, people who are other Trump appointees that are afraid of him or jealous of him. But what has happened is he's overdone it, and he's come out very negative looking. I mean, doing the Nazi salute, even by accident, was dumb. Taking a chainsaw, trying to influence the judge, the election for the judge in Minnesota, or was it Wisconsin? I can't remember. But I mean, that was right out of it. $20 million for a judge, and he lost. So he's losing, and Trump doesn't like losers, so he's got to go. Plus, he's losing huge in his own business. He has to learn one thing. He is useless at politics. Absolutely stupid.
Yeah.
His political opinions are kindergarten stuff. Like, he's just too dumb that way. Everything else he's really good at. It's like Henry Ford, that kind of a guy. Super smart technologically, politically, dumber than a bag of hammers.
All right, you got to go. You got to do your rounds. So
yes, and let me remind you, even despite the Colorado firebombing and the murder of the two young Israelis, Gaza is still an issue. It's a huge issue. Every day, there's a wasteland there. The Israeli government will not allow independent observers there, will not allow independent journalists in there, and that's because they're on a murder fest. And do not forget, Gaza is one of the most heinous crimes ever. I mean, it was participated by a crime, and it's a crime tenfold larger than the crime that started it, and that was the Hamas attack.
Yeah.
Anyway, without further ado, I bid you adieu. Pray for peace.